Okay, Wellness Warriors, we're going to try to do this again. I did check this time, I have audio. So I watched a video from Max German defending himself against Layne Norton today. And I wanted to talk to you guys about it because this video was about HbA1c. And although I'm going to make a video about what he said in his video, it has absolutely changed the way that I will talk to my doctors moving forward about anything to do with my health, but especially to do with diabetes or my blood work. So, what Max explained is that before I say that, when I started keto, Dr. Westman warned us that we need our doctor to understand that we are doing a low carbohydrate diet. Because if we didn't tell them about our low carbohydrate diet, the doctor would be more likely to take our blood work and compare it to everyone else's blood work. And then we would be given bad information. He pretty much said that if they don't know and understand what your blood work should look like, we will be pointed in the wrong direction and we'll be told that our good, healthy things are not healthy. That was 8 years ago when I learned that from watching his famous white coat video. So, what Max and Layne were arguing about, HbA1c, was exactly what Dr. Westman was warning us about. So I have some notes here to help me to stay on track because this is new information and I want to make sure I kind of explain it to you well. I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to talk you through what this stuff is making me think about now because like I said, it's going to change everything that I'm doing when I talk to my doctor. So there's two primary measurements that we look at when we're talking about diabetes. It's fasting glucose and HbA1c. And so Layne did something in the video that I wanted to say first. So this Max had nothing to do with this. Although he helped me to understand that Layne was doing it, but he didn't go in deep in this. I want to just point out in the video, Layne kept saying, well, first thing he said that kind of caught my attention that Max didn't touch was that if you have you been following carnivores? Carnivores have been telling us that we should have the lowest amount of sugar in our blood possible. He said that carnivore doctors said this. I've never had a carnivore doctor tell me that I should have the lowest amount of sugar in my blood because we don't control how much sugar is in our blood. And that, I mean, is just a biology thing. So that Layne said that to a bunch of people watching these videos, some of whom would not be into sciences or biology or whatever, is giving them this faulty understanding that the food we eat, if we eat less sugar, would somehow allow us to have less sugar in our blood, which we would never actually have less sugar in it. So again, it's one of those weird things where if you overeat sugar for a short period of time, or sometimes a long period of time, you can have more sugar in your blood, but you wouldn't be able to undereat sugar and dramatically have low blood sugar unless you have another condition happening. But just like normal intake of food is not going to cause that because our body tightly regulates how much sugar is in our blood. Again, it's just a biology thing. We don't get to control that. And that's okay. So that was the first thing that he said. And one of the reasons that I want to call this out especially is because in the video, he names Dr. Baker and his blood sugar numbers that showed that he was diabetic. And he named a few different, he named Max, right? So he named people that he could call out that were making this kind of mistake. He didn't name anyone. So any doctor that's carnivore that said that we're supposed to have low blood sugar, like that's a goal of carnivore. So I wanted to call that out. The second thing that he said, he kept confounding the word glycation and glycosylation. And honestly, Wellness Warrior, I didn't even know that glycosylation was actually a something. Like I didn't realize that that was a word per se. Like I thought at first he was making a mistake and mispronouncing glycosylation. So anyways, I'm going to get to that in a second. Fasting glucose is your blood sugar when you wake up in the morning before you've eaten food. And they usually take it in the morning because most people can't go that long without eating. I don't know if it would be the same if I just took it before I ate anything. So would my fasting glucose number when I wake up be the same as before I eat my first meal at like 2 or 8 o'clock in the afternoon or the PM? So like, I don't know if it would be the same, but fasting glucose means is just that you haven't had anything to eat. They're taking your blood sugar numbers. And then HbA1c is the glycation factor on your blood cells. So glycation, which is the word that he was messing with us about, is when proteins stick to, sorry, when glucose sticks to your proteins. Glycosylation, which is the word he kept throwing back and forth, glycosylation is a natural thing that happens when enzymes add a carbohydrate to a protein molecule, and that usually happens for signaling. Normal thing to happen. It frustrates me that he was mixing these two words back and forth because glycosylation is a natural thing that your body does so that your cells can communicate with each other. And I'm sure there are other reasons, so that like enzymes will do that so that something can enter another cell. There are normal reasons for this to happen compared to compared to glycation, which is the damaging of the protein. So for example, the protein in your blood is called hemoglobin, the damaging of that protein with sugar. They're two different things. It frustrates me that he flipped those words back and forth because it could confuse people. Also, it frustrates me because 5% of our hemoglobin being glycated is one of the signature things that they look for to say that, hey, you've become diabetic. And I think it's like 5.7. So it's not just 5. You have to be above 5. I think that, so 5.7, right, I think is the number. So let me just get forward here. Max was pointing out that we can't just use that 5.7 number because he found a study that talked about how long our blood cells live. Our blood cells typically live 120 days. That's like a normal span in the complete population. So what this study did is it looked at a group of diabetics, and in that group of diabetics, 30% of them had blood cells that were living 93 days or less. 69% of them had blood cells that were living in that normal range-ish, so from 93 days to 123. And then 1%, just a small 1%, had blood cells that were living over 123 days, so longer than expected. And these were all people diagnosed with diabetes. And what they figured out was if your blood cells live, so they used more like 120 days like they're supposed to, versus most of the people, let's say that 30% that was living under 90 days, if you look at those two numbers, the amount of glycation is not the same because the longer your blood cells live, the more natural glycations they would have because it's normal. And then you can't say that the amount of glycation is the same. And I know that sounds complicated, so I'm going to give you an example. Here's how I want you to think about it. If my house can take 3 months to get to the point where the cleaning lady needs to come. So the cleaning lady came, and then 90 days later, the cleaning lady has to come again. And that's like the range where now my house is dirty, it needs to be cleaned. You would agree that if my neighbor can get 120 days before their house is as dirty as mine, then my house is in a worse state than their house is because they can go longer in between getting their house cleaned. Even though we are getting to the same state when the cleaning lady comes, right? I'm going to be spending more money on my cleanings because I'm going to have to do 4 cleanings a year, where my neighbor is only going to have to do 3 cleanings a year. And I'm doing it like that because I want you to see where it's not just that the house got dirty, it's how quickly the house got dirty that matters. Reverse that. The reason that they postulate that our blood cells can live longer is because they're healthier, because it like they're just we are healthier, our blood cells will live longer. And so getting to that 5%, and you don't necessarily need to get to 5%, but this is the marker they're using. So he gave a mathematical example for this to make sense to us, and he used the number of diabetic, right? So 5.7. So if you have a person in this example, 80-day life cycle of their blood cell, so there's 80 days, and they have a 5.7, then you do so it's going to be 5.7 times 100, which is the 100 days, just to get a number, divided by the actual number of days so that their lifespan is. In this particular case, this person is 80. So 100 divided by 80 would give me a 125. So 5.7 times 1.25 would give us a 7.25 glycation number, compared to a healthy person whose blood cells are living 125 days in the example they used. So 100 divided by the number of days the blood cells actually lived, 125, sorry, gives a factor of 0.8. So now 5.7 times 0.8 gives us 4.56%. This person is no longer considered diabetic because we took into account how long their blood cells lived. So in the example, Layne was talking about how Dr. Baker, when he was doing a competition to try to become the best rower at his age category, he posted his numbers. His HbA1c was 7. So that's well into the diabetic range. And he explained it by saying that he's working out a lot. His body is actually pumping sugar into his body for his muscles to be able to do what they're doing. Therefore, he's not diabetic. But Max brings this other piece of data in that shows that, well, also, how long were his blood cells living? By the time he did that competition, he had been doing a carnivore lifestyle for years. I think Dr. Baker at this point is like, I don't know if he's quite 20 years yet, but if he's not, he's close to being that. He's been doing this for a long time, more than 10 years for sure. So his blood cells, likely because our blood cells regenerate within months, I think it's 5 months that we get our complete body of blood cells. We have new ones. There's not one that was there 6 months ago, basically. Because that regeneration is happening so quickly, what Max was pointing out is also he would not be. So if we do the same math and we say 7 times and we do the 0.8, let's assume that I'm not even going to do 0.8. The average person's blood cells should live, if you're an average person, should live 120 days, right? So let's just say for a second that it only did 120 days. Let's do the math. So then it would be, so if we did 120 days, so 0.071, no, that's wrong. That was for 140 days. So let's say 100 divided by 120. Can I clear this? Clear. Okay, so 100 divided by 120. And then we multiply that by 7 is going to give us a 5.83. So he would then be just slightly diabetic. But the other thing that Max pointed out is that it's in the normal population. 120 is the normal number, and healthy people, they found actually their blood cells live to 140. So if we do it with the 140, then we actually end up getting the number of 7.14. I'm sorry. Nope, I said it wrong. We ended up getting a number of 5.00001. So his blood sugar would have been just barely at the edge, right? Of like you're still normal. I think the most important thing is that Dr. Baker's blood sugar also went back to normal, so back to the 5-ish range when he stopped his crazy trying to beat that world record. And so what his numbers look normal again, but they're still not using this math. So if we have a person who has a 5 and they're so again, it's 100 divided by 140 is going to give you 0.714, a bunch of numbers. And if you multiply that by the normal 5 that most people get, well, now you have a 3.54. So all of this to say, we get so focused and laser pointed on these numbers that are comparing us not to anyone who's eating like us, and that creates problems. The other thing that Max talked about was that the primary determining factors for who's going to be healthy versus who's going to become diabetic is having low oxidative stress, which eating a carnivore diet helps you to do. Like you have less oxidative stress happening in your body, low blood sugar. And again, it's not about having low unhealthy low numbers. It's having the right number. We're supposed to have 5-ish grams of carbohydrates floating around in our body at any particular point in time. Having the right amount of blood sugar is what you're aiming at, not low. So even the way some of these things are worded, it's kind of misleading because it makes us think we're aiming at low when the truth is we're aiming at biologically correct, which our body fights for. It makes sure that you stay in those numbers. And then the last thing was nutrient dense food. Like when we consume a lot of nutrient dense foods, we are much less likely to have diabetes. If you eat high carbohydrate, low density food, you are more likely to have diabetes, also because you're bringing in so much sugar. So again, that whole conversation. I think the last thing that kind of caught my attention was the fact that instead of focusing the conversation on the science, Layne was really invested in making fun of people, especially Max. And I don't know if he made fun of Max because Max is not a doctor, but he was making fun of his appearance, not making fun of his logical conclusions. He was making fun of his appearance. So it kind of reminded me of back in the day when we would have um, politicians who, rather than stick to the facts, they would just try to diminish the person's character so that people would stop listening to them. And that's what it felt like Layne was doing. It was like he was trying to throw a bunch of mud on Max so that people would go, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, rather than talk about the science of what Max was talking about. Right. And I feel like Max did point that out. And it really made me start to question how many other influencers out there are using the wrong words and like flipping words around to distract us. How many other influencers out there are pretending that things are something that they're not? And of course, if we don't know that they're giving us bad information, we keep believing that the things that they're talking about, the things that they're pointing us towards are real, and it gets us to eat wrong. It gets us to listen to their distraction. And when we listen to their distraction, we get pulled into eating the wrong things. And next thing you know, we're not healthy. We're struggling with our food. And unfortunately, maybe we quit the healthy diet right? Or we go to our doctor, we don't know that the length of time that our blood cells live means something. And so they tell us, well, you have a 5.7, and we're freaking out when they haven't checked, but how long do my blood cells live? That we're not confident that we have blood cells that are living 140 days, right? If you've been doing this long enough, we should have confidence that our blood cells are living longer than the 180, right? The lower level number of days that most people's blood cells are living for, right? There is a range somewhere between 80 and 120. If they do that 100 in the middle, like we think they're doing to get the average for the population, it's not representative of what our number would actually be. So these are important things for us to understand. And I want you to use this information when you are interpreting your data. And if you can even get, I don't know how hard or easy it is to get how long our blood cells are living. Is that an easy test for our doctors to do? Is it a hard test for our doctors to do? The problem is most of the time, the doctors aren't doing the tests that would help us to fully understand situations. They're doing the easy things, right? And they're not doing the things that give us the data that we need to really scrutinize our own information. Another thing that I'm going to point out, I was listening to a video from Dr. Mason the other day, and he said, doctor is Latin for teacher. Too often today, our doctors are talking to us from a perspective of, you should do what I tell you, rather than from the perspective of, here's the information so that you can make the best possible decision for yourself, since it's your health on the line. And I appreciated Dr. Mason pointing that out, because it goes back to what I've been kind of trying to get people to see. We are partners in this story with our doctors. It's not for them to tell us what to do. It's for them to help guide us. What are our options? And yes, give us an educated guidance, but not pushing an agenda that's coming from outside that doesn't take my specific situation into consideration. A lot of the guidelines and protocols of hospitals are more about them not being liable for our problems and issues. And if we don't make it through a procedure, it's more about that than making sure that we are doing well. So again, I wanted to talk about this because I know for myself, this is absolutely going to change the conversations I have with my doctors moving forward. And I hope it gives you some way of looking at this information that helps you to make a better decision for yourself. So every Monday I go live. I hope you're going to join me for the next live. And if you enjoyed this little brain dump that I did for you today, where I just talk about things off the top of my head, and like I took a few notes and I presented it to you. If that's interesting to you, let me know. And I'll make more of these, because I think that it's a way for me to share what's going on in my head and help you to see some information in the best way that I can quickly, without it taking weeks to get things to you. So yeah, let me know if you've found this helpful, and I will talk to you again I'm going to be live next week, Monday, 11:20 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, as usual. So I hope to see you there, Wellness Warrior. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you soon. Today's video is brought to you by My Keto Consultations. You know how to do keto, but you're having trouble just sticking with it? Book a consultation with me, and we're going to get you back on track. The link is in the description.